Students, to all of you. Students, today we are going to begin the analysis, the textual analysis of the dramatic monologue entitled A Grammarian's Funeral, written by famous Victorian poet Robert Browning. Students, this dramatic monologue was first published in the book entitled Men and Women in the year 1855 by Robert Browning. Students, this is a very famous dramatic monologue and it celebrates Renaissance. Students, as we know, a man is a product of his times, of the environment in which he lives. A man inherits and also inculcates the characteristics of his age. And such was the grammarian that has been mentioned and celebrated of the Renaissance period in this dramatic monologue. With all his pedantry and his specialization of a small area of knowledge, he was a product of the revival of the learning which took place in the 15th century. Students, his dead body is being carried by his devoted disciples, and they plan it to bury on top of a high hill, the only proper place for an elevated and cultured man. One of the pallbearers tell story and offer a hymn of praise. They cannot bury him in the plains where common uninspiring persons lay buried. A lower peak is not proper for his burial. He must be at the peak which soars above all others. Students, before analyzing this poem, let us go through the textual part that we are going to discuss in our today's class. Today we are going to discuss almost first 40 lines of this marvelous dramatic monologue. A grammarian's funeral. Shortly after the revival of learning in Europe, let us begin and carry up this corpse, singing together, leave we the common crofts, the vulgar tropes, each in its tether, sleeping safe on the bosom of the plain, cared for till cock crow. Look out if yonder be not day again, rimming the rock row. That's the appropriate country. There men's thought, rarer, intenser, self-gathered for an outbreak as it ought. Chefs in the censer. Leave we the unlettered plain, its herd and crop, on all mountains, citied to the top, crowded with culture. All the peaks so, but on the rest excels, clouds overcome it. No, yonder sparkle is the citadels circling its summit. Thither our path lies, wind we up the heights, wait ye the warning, our low life was the levels and the nights, his for the morning. Step to a tune, square chests, erect each head, where the beholders. This is our master, famous, calm, and dead, borne on our shoulders. Sleep, crop and herd, sleep, darkling, throp and croft, safe from the weather, he whom we convey to his grave aloft, singing together. He was a man born with thy face and throat, lyric Apollo. Long he lived nameless. How should spring take note, winter would follow? Till lo, the little touch and youth was gone, cramped and diminished, moaned he, new measures, other feet anon, my dance finished. Students, the famous poem A Grammarian's Funeral begins by one of his devoted disciples claiming that their master was a great scholar who, like a candle in pursuit of knowledge, burnt himself. He is dead, and his disciples are carrying his body up a tall mountain on the peak on which he is to be buried. One of the disciples sings the morning song in which he gives an account of the dead grammarian's life and achievements. This disciple is addressing to the rest of his fellow friends who were also disciples of this great grammarian. This disciple shares his thoughts with his fellow friends, and he says that they will carry his crops up the mountain, and as the funeral procession proceeds, they would sing together a funeral song. He says that they will leave behind the common fields and villages where the people live tied to their respective duties, like animals to the stake. They sleep safely in their villages situated on the plain, secure from all the worries and care, till the morning when the cock crows and awakens them. He says that while it is dark on the plains, the light of the rising sun strikes the edges of the mountain peak. The mountain peak, which is the first to receive the light of the rising sun, is the fittest place for the burial of the dead grammarian. He says that the top of the hill is the most fitting place to put the grammarian to rest, since he was lofty and sublime, and since he aspired loftily after an ideal, the hilltop is the proper place. There the thought of man becomes purer and intenser. It is well concentrated there. As such, it can burst into a flame there. The thought becomes sore or gets itself irritated if it is surrounded by the pleasures and luxuries. Therefore, they leave the plains and the ignorant people and their herd of cattle and their crops. He says that they will go up and bury their dead master on the peak of that tall mountain, the sides of which are covered with cities, right up to the top, cities which are the abode of learning, culture, as the plains below are those of ignorance. He says that here there are a number of peaks and all of them rise high, but one of them is higher than the other. It is encircled with clouds. There is to be seen a ray of bright light on this peak. It is not high. It is not the light of the morning. It comes from the fort standing on that peak. They would bury their master on this peak. They would go up there. the singer asks the other disciples as to why they do not begin to climb. Are they waiting for any signal from him? As they begin to move, he compares their own lives with that of their master. Their life is the life of the plain and the night, while his life was the life of the morning. In other words, they passed their lives surrounded by the darkness of ignorance, while his life was passed in the light of knowledge and culture. He then warns the other disciples to walk in a dignified manner with their heads raised high and their chests square, for there are onlookers watching their movements. They must remember that their master, whose body they are carrying, was famous and self controlled. Now he is dead, and their tribute to him must be worthy of his greatness. Students, now the disciples of the dead scholar climb up the mountain carrying the body of their master on their shoulders. The plains with their crops, with their cattle, their fields and villages are left behind. People there sleep comfortably in their ignorance. In the plains they are quite safe from the storms or snowfalls. The people in the plain are ignorant, while their master was learned and cultured. In his youth, he was handsome and healthy as Apollo, the god of poetry and music. For a long time, he remained obscure and unknown, but he worked hard to acquire knowledge. In his youth, he did not know that the spring of his youth would soon be overtaken by the winter of old days. The grammarian was born with the face and thought of Apollo. In his youth, this grammarian had the beauty and vigor of Apollo. Students, in Greek mythology, Apollo was the god of music and learning. He was also the sun god, the awakener and giver of life. The grammarian is the modern Apollo according to his disciples. The old age came rather too soon as a result of his excessive devotion to his studies. At the touch of disease caused by overwork, his youth was gone. He became old, shrunken, and withered, with his power and energy much diminished. But he did not groan. He never complained, nor did he say that his career was over. Now others should take his place and dance their own dance and live the life of their choice. In other words, he did not stop working even when he had grown old and diseased. He knew that the others do so, but he did not follow their examples. He continued to work hard at his studies. Students, this much for today. We will continue the analysis of this famous dramatic monologue, A Grammarian's Funeral, in our next classes. Thank you very much.